Today I'm working on the Arctic Cat. I've got a problem where the splines on the shaft here, the shift shaft, and also the lever that's the foot lever that's mounted to it are stripped. And no matter how much I tighten this bolt assembly, which actually was put in here by me to replace the one that had snapped. The one that had snapped was not the original. The original actually threaded into a tapped and threaded hole that is completely worn out. So, make a long story short, no amount of tightening of this bolt, even with a locking nut attached to it, will keep this from shifting position on me about 15 degrees, which is just enough to unfortunately interfere with where the pedal here will start to bottom out and bang on this footrest. So what I've got to do is I've got to come up with a fix for this. Some guys tack weld these on. They just put a tack weld right here, and then if you need to take it off, you grind the tack weld off. Problem is, when you tack weld it, you apply a lot of heat to this shaft, and you can damage the oil seal that's behind here, and then you end up with an oil leak. The 100% fix would be to replace this shaft and the foot lever assembly, which I would love to do, except that first off, the foot lever assembly is only about 18 bucks, but the shaft is considerably more expensive. I think it's somewhere around 80 bucks for the shaft, and it's also a major labor to disassemble this and change this shaft out. I've actually already had this all apart. I just replaced that gasket that was leaking on this thing, and unfortunately at that time I didn't realize how bad the shaft was and didn't replace it at that point. Now I've got it all back together. I really don't want to have to tear it all down and spend the extra money of putting the shaft into it. So the fix I came up with is this. I've drilled a hole right through underneath the bolt here, right through the center, and it's going to go right. It's going right through the center of the shaft here, and it comes out the other side. It's an 1/8 inch hole, which will accommodate an 1/8 inch spring pin or roll pin. These actually have an OD of about 135 thousandths because they're not compressed yet, and the 1 divided by 8, which is 1/8, and decimal is 100.125, which is 125 thousandths. So the hole is actually a little bit smaller. What happens is when you tap this pin into place, spring tension will hold it in there. A couple of quick notes about drilling this hole. Because of the way the frame is located, it's very hard to get a drill in there. You're not going to be able to drill the hole straight across perpendicular to the shaft, which is what you would like, but you really can't do that because the frame gets in the way, and the only way you're going to get a drill in there at that proper angle is if the shaft was out of the motor completely, which if you're going to go through the trouble of taking the shaft out of the motor, you might as well put a brand new shaft in. And then the last thing was when you're putting these pins in, easy way to get them started, they've got a chamfered edge, and that's what helps get them started. But you place it in the hole and you hold it with a pair of needle nose like this, and then you tap it. That way your big beefy fingers, or at least my fingers are pretty big, aren't in the way when you're trying to get that thing lined up and started. I also wanted to mention, make sure you use a liberal amount of cutting oil on your drill bit, and go easy, don't force it. It's only an 1/8 inch drill bit that you're using, and you certainly don't want to snap off a drill bit and get it stuck in there, because that's just going to add more headache. I've actually started the pin in now, and you can actually see it almost looks like it's going in crooked, but that's because my hole is actually drilled at that angle, because my my smallest drill got in here close to the frame, and that's the closest I could get to perpendicular. So now I'm going to finish tapping it home. Okay, now the pin is installed, and that's a 1 inch long 1/8 inch pin, and it's the perfect size as far as length goes. It's just protruding out the other end of the hole, and so now I know it's in there good, and that should hopefully give me a good fix or workaround until at some later date I break it down and replace that shaft.